I didn't want to protest. I felt that the George Floyds and Ahmaud Arbery's got all the care and compassion they needed, while the Shane Calvins, the Ayanna Dior's, the Tony McDade's were all forgotten. My vocal coach, who is androgynous and just so happens to be a multi-talented living legend by the name of Lapzul, Lapzul, that's right, look him up, asked me to come over to his house. He said that we were going to protest, and I had the biggest stank face I ever had. Every step I took was a memory flooding back into my mind. I grew up a queer black kid on the south side of Chicago. And I remember the first time someone called me a faggot and I told the teacher. I was made fun of for being Tekashi 6ix9ine before Tekashi 6ix9ine. I gotten into fights. I pushed a kid down the stairs. I threw anything that wasn't nailed to the ground. Slowly but surely, I started to develop anger issues, but my anger was also a defense mechanism. It's so interesting when people ask, why are you so angry, hostile, mean? If I were to entertain such a ridiculous question, I'd say that 500 years of intersectional oppression is bound to give anyone who is more in depth with how they feel a resting bitch face. I was an easily impressionable child whose only focus was pleasing everyone around me, trying to be the nice, polite, good kid who ate shit and breathed respectability politics to avoid disappointment from grown-ups. I wanted to see myself as better than the other kids around me. But I didn't put as much effort in focusing on exactly what I wanted. And that's a lot of us LGBTQ youth out here. We're in our 20s living out our childhoods. We're in our 30s living out our teenage years. And we in our 40s finally living out adulthood because we were late on the generational wealth of positive life experiences for those of us who has that type of background. And my focus at that time was putting on a hyper-masculine persona for survival. And parts of me slipped through the cracks of the walls that I've built over the years. From stealing my grandmother's wig and pretending to be Oprah, to singing Crazy in Love in math class, to fellow classmates asking me if I liked boys or girls and fake crying and saying I don't know, to people asking me why I walk like that, to my first time seeing Trey Songz's six-pack. Oh yeah, neighbors know his name, and I do too. It was almost like God was telling almost every black parent, you get a hetero, you get a hetero, you get a hetero, you get a hetero. Everybody gets a hetero. Except you. But anyway, as we approached, back to the story, as we approached, some of the protesters were literally running away from us. Literally. I shit you not. And yet, we stayed. It was such a metaphor for how conditioned we are to ride or die for a culture that doesn't hold themselves accountable when it comes to how people like me are treated within our own communities. My vocal coach and I had our fists up for what felt like 5 minutes. I was starting to feel comfortable. I was starting to feel unified. I started to feel protected until my vocal coach decided it was time to leave, and he got up and screamed, "Trans Black Lives Matter." But honestly, it seemed like 2 black lives didn't matter in that moment. I left unshocked, although every breath I take is shock value to some. This was a story about a black person whose identity is always placed in a debate. This is a story about a black person who was raised in a culture that doesn't think queerness is real because they can't see it, but can somehow believe in a homophobic, transphobic slave master sky daddy. This is being visibly queer in a fight for my own blackness. Thank you.
Our society rarely asks to hear a black woman's voice, so thank you for asking me to testify, giving me this opportunity. My name is Angela Barnes. I am black, a woman, and queer. I feel incredibly lucky and blessed to be able to make that statement and to live my life out loud. I usually point the camera away from me towards those places and those images that keep me calm, that bring me closer to my center and closer to home. But there's been so much going on in our country lately. So much that's motivated by fear and anger and hatred. I want to acknowledge the beauty, though, and the desire to be better and to do better. More often than not, my voice is muffled, my experience disregarded, my intelligence questioned, and in fact, my entire existence is seen as an aberration. And yet I persist. Why? I was raised by quiet, strong, majestic black women. Women who understood the possibilities in this life and in this world for me and my sister. Because they knew we would have to contend with being black and being a woman. These were the women who set those expectations. Not limits, but expectations. The expectation that we would work hard, be honest, stand by our commitments, and help others. And I was taught to acquire those things in life that no one can take away from you. Your education, your experiences, and your integrity. You know, I want to say her name. Emma Jean, Edith, Louise, Kristen, and my mother Doris. Because these were the women who taught me to be a proud black woman. And I want to say his name. John, Richard, Eli, Handy, Earl II, and Earl, my father. Because these were the black men who loved the black women in their lives. And this is my family. And they had enough love to value and respect all love. What has transpired in our country of late is, I think, a reckoning. It turns out black people aren't paranoid. We actually did not exaggerate the threat that white America had on our bodies and our souls. But it was simply that no one was listening, or they didn't want to listen, or they didn't want to believe. I have always been afraid that my gentle, successful, intelligent brother would be stopped one night and never make it home. And of course, I am Sandra Bland. I do wonder if the blinders have fallen. It now seems laughable and willfully ignorant to claim that black people haven't been terrorized for hundreds of years in America, and that this terror has taken a toll. It seems shocking to not acknowledge that black and brown communities have been crippled by fear. Our trans community, all of these communities continue to endure this terror. But it seems now that I can finally say out loud what I've always felt inside. I am a Black queer woman who is confident and proud. I am all of these things in one, and I do not have to choose for which identity I fight, because I fight for each and every one. I will not be silenced because I make you feel uncomfortable, because you want me to say certain words at a certain time in a certain order. I will not whisper because, well, it seems you cannot hear me when I whisper. Oh, listen. Yes. But I will speak my truth just as surely as you have spoken yours, because the men and women who raised me to be heard. Thank you.
Spiritual person, yes, I am. I am a Christian. I have my relationship with my higher father, which is God. I'm very much in tune with it. I'm all in for it. Yeah, my biggest thing, if you don't have God, then you're lost. A community is no other different than a heterosexual community. It's the same. We're all human beings who live a very productive life. Whether you're gay, whether you're a lesbian, whether you're trans man, trans woman, queer, pansexual, whatever the case may be, I believe us as a community, we are a community, but we have so much diversity going on within our community. And that's why we can't all come together. How can I put this in a nice way? I'm a gay man. For some reason, it seems like it's always division. And when I say division, it can be on various reasons. It can be because a person has boobs, because a person got a big ass, a person got long hair. Oh, we don't like her because she got short hair. She don't get her nails done. It's just too much division. Just let people be. Let everyone live accordingly to how they want to live. Whatever they identify as, that's their business. Because at the end of the day, when they leave this world, they only got to answer to one person. Reason why it's so much division amongst the LGBTQI plus community is because of the factor that everyone hasn't hashed out problems. Whatever problems that goes on amongst two individuals, they keep that hatred going for so long, and it don't do any good better. It just add more fuel to the fire. It's a tragedy. And what I mean by a tragedy is a tragedy that this community that we so are LGBTQ plus I, we all can't get along. Instead, they're acting like an animal that belongs in a cage. Funding, not only on the south side, but everywhere on the north side. In places such as Howard Broadway Youth Center, Center House, that they need a little bit more, to be a little bit more diverse and give everyone the benefit of the doubt to come in. Don't don't be choosing who you're gonna hire, who you're not gonna hire, who you want to help and who you're not gonna help. Everyone is struggling with something at the end of the day. And if I believe the person is coming in to get services, the only thing that's rightful is to give them service. whether that's food, whether that's clothing, whether that's housing, whether that's medical, whether that's transportation. A service is a service, regardless of how that person may have made you feel. A service is a service. And it's plethora of services that the LGBTQI plus has that we don't, as being Black, you don't get the privilege of walking into fancy restaurants or fancy stores without being looked at because of the color of your skin. Oh, well, your ID says Joshua, but you're dressed as a female. I guess you're a man, or just crazy stuff. And I'm just saying, this is just goes on where a trans woman cannot be trans woman. Some have backgrounds, some just choose not to do surgeries or whatever reason. Everybody's transition is everybody's transition. But when it comes down to it, the world will be a better place if we can all come together and love on each other. Communication is what the community needs. An outlet, whether it's in art, whether it's in music, whether it's in dance, whether it's in poetry. They need an outlet to release that anger. Share anyone who's been convicted of a crime, wrongfully charged with it, and still had to deal with services that are guaranteed to them, but because of their background, they couldn't access it. That's been one of my biggest barriers to my transition, where I can't get my name changed. Certain services I do want, I can't get them until 10 years. That has been the biggest impact on me for the rest of my life. But the flip side of me going to jail, it taught me how to value freedom while you have it, and value people that you have around, because nobody knows when it's their time to go. Regardless of what society has portrayed, regardless of what our political figures have done, you have to be that voice. You have to demand that change. You have to stand up for what you need. Can no one do change without the people? It says in the Constitution, we, the people of the United States. That includes everyone. Everyone needs to exercise their rights, exercise their freedom of speech, but don't do it in a violent way, but do it in a peaceful way.
This is my black queer testimony. Thank you, QES, for this opportunity to share my story. I've shared my story before, briefly, but I never shared my black queer testimony. I don't even really know where to start. I'm non-binary androgynous. I'm also of Native American descent, of African descent, and European descent. I have slave owners in my family. Ancestry. Not in my family now. Nobody owns slaves in my family right now. Well, trust me. I've felt a life of bondage. But I'm free. I'm me. But if I was me 100 years ago, or 200 years ago, or 300 years ago, or 400 years ago, I would not be free. And that's why I want to share my testimony. When European settlers came to the shores of Native Africa and Native America, the first thing they saw was me. Well, not literally me. I was not there. But my people were there. People just like me. Non-binary Native descendants. We were on the front lines of battle. We were the warriors and the doctors and the teachers and the parents. Non-binary Native Africans and Americans were killed on sight. They scared the shit out of Europeans. This is a common trend amongst Europeans and the native descendants of Africans and native descendants of Americans. Being scared shitless by native traditional customs. The gender binary was put into place to suppress and oppress native descendants for generations, not just one. Because being queer does not just stop at killing people. Being queer must be eradicated from the social structure. It must be known that it is bad and unwanted. And so what are we when we're born into a family, a black family? Unwanted. And that is exactly how they would have it. My testimony is not to shit on white people. It's just to tell you who I am and why I am who I am and why I will not be what they say I am. A man. I have not been and never have been male. I've known this forever. My family has known this. My lovers have known this. Most of my friends have known this. But I never said it. I never told anybody until I had a word for it. What I didn't know is that there already was a word for it that my people had for me. I'm not just non-binary, I'm two-spirit. I'm native descendant of African and American indigenous peoples. And I have a bloodline that has gifted me with knowledge of self and others to heal spirit. Of course, that scares the shit out of white people. Am I here to scare? No. I'm here to heal. And I only have one way of knowing how to do it. And that's by sharing my gift. My biggest influence is Lil Peep. If you don't know, he's white. And it doesn't matter to me. Because I loved his music. He was also bisexual. Which means he would love people like me. But most importantly, he loved something. Or at least he thought he did. Why, oh why, oh why, oh why do I adore you? Oh why, oh why do I want, and why would I want? Why do I want, and why would I want to, if I don't love? So sick of being weak. This liquor makes me think. When I'm with her, it's peachy, so peachy. We get so freaky. She wanna wrap her Gucci and Gucci, and I don't want no fussing. I pray she never trusts me, cause honestly I'm over envy. Sadness is disgusting. No capping, you're such a bore. You laugh, I snore. I come to my senses and you come for more. You're so adored. But why do I want you? And why would I want to? Oh, why do I? Why? Oh, why? Oh, why? Why do I adore you? Oh, why? Oh, why do I? Why? Oh, why? Oh, why? Oh, why? Why do I adore you? Oh, why? Oh, why do I want you? You're such a bore. sex a chore. You say no more than I implore. You break my core. I can't face for why would I want to? Isn't that why I called you? Didn't mean to appall you. I messed it up. Everything that I bring to the grave. You're such a boy. And why would I want you? Oh, why, oh, why,
Hey, I am Consuela Brown, and this is my QIS or QES testimonial for 2020. Thank you for letting me tell my story. So I am an out and proud African American lesbian, and have been out. Officially, I came out in, I think, November of 1986. So a long time ago. I've been out almost, 25 years at least. And for the most part, and I came out to my family in 1998. So it took me a little while to come out to my family, but once I came out to them, I was out. Not that they were terribly excited about it, but they told me that they knew all along that I was in fact gay and wondered why it had taken me so long to come out. And so there was such a relief when I finally didn't have to hide that secret. So I am, my partner is Norma Celadon, and she is Latina. And it has, my family is totally accepting of her. I actually think it helps that she's Latina. And so part of my testimony today is about the nuances of being Black and queer, and Black and queer in the United States versus Africa. But being in an interracial couple, so one of the things I just want to say, sort of have this common theme, is even as I began to try to date in Chicago, I would often be met with this common phrase of Black women won't date you. And I thought that interesting. Like, why not? I'm a Black woman. However, my partner happens to be Latina, and not intentionally. She just was the right person for me at the right time. So I am, yes, I'm blackity black, 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 have always been. This false dichotomy about what you choose or how you choose to be. I present as a Black woman, first and foremost, and I don't often, I am just who I am. So my sexuality is just one part of me, one aspect of me, but I don't live in that space all the time. But when I'm finding myself in states of rage, it is in those states of my Blackness as it expresses, it gets expressed and gets dismembered and dishonored in the context of the United States and other places. But I don't know about my sexuality because I have not, well, to be continued. So I am mostly out. I have to say that I don't hide who I am. I often think that you can't miss it. That that to see me is to clearly know that I am involved with women, but I'm always surprised when people don't get it. And I don't. I move through the world with a simplicity about this is who I'm involved with. And so when they see me with Norma, I'm not hiding that fact. And I have made it a point whenever I interview for a job, one of the first things that I tell a potential employer is I'm a lesbian. And if that's, going to be a problem, then it's not a place that I want to work. And any kind of circle or community that I find myself in, I am always coming out or being really clear about this is who I am. And, if you get a problem with it, so be it. I will have to say, as I was thinking about I've seen the Bud Billiken Parade on TV. I've actually worked the Bud Billiken Parade with Norma. But the only place that I've not hidden, but I've not expressly or overtly come out, is in certain African American communities where I fear for my safety. I have been reticent to publicly come out, but I don't hide. I'm not trying to hide or hold my partner's hand or to give her a kiss but I am very mindful, especially as I think about Black trans women who are trying to navigate Black spaces sometimes, and not all Black spaces feel welcoming to us as queer folk. And I'm not suggesting that Black people are any more homophobic than any other community, because I don't think that's the case. But I am mindful of the fact that there are some places that don't allow always for us to fully express who we are as it relates to our sexuality. So I'm mostly out. And I was a Peace Corps volunteer. So I lived in a bunch of different African countries, and I was out, and I did have partners. So I lived in Africa for almost 8 years, and in those 8 years, I had 3 partners, 2 of them African American and 1 white, and so this is me in Zambia. My partner, whose head is kind of chopped off at the top. This is a going away party for me, and I am dancing with a male friend. What was interesting about this party? So I never hid my sexuality. I was working for the Peace Corps at that point, so I was considered an official staff person for Peace Corps. And actually, I was dating. So I had 4 partners in the 6 years that I was overseas. 2 of them were white women, 2 of them were African American women. And I never, in that instance, feared for my safety. I did travel, and I'll talk about it at the end. I traveled quite a bit in Africa by myself. And there were moments, one of which I remember clearly, of barricading myself in a hotel room because I was afraid that I was at a hotel in Zimbabwe. I had hitchhiked from South Africa up through Zimbabwe and was staying the night by myself, and was at a bar, and there were like 4 men, and they were like asking me questions. And I remember barricading myself in the room that night because I didn't know what was going to happen. I also remember traveling through Kenya. I had hitchhiked up through Zimbabwe, took a plane over to from Zimbabwe to Nairobi, and then I was hitchhiking through Kenya, and I remember being in Nairobi on my way to Mombasa, and I got on a bus, and there was a gentleman who sat next to me, and he gave me a condom, and I'd been as a young woman traveling throughout Africa, had been hit on a lot, even though friends of mine had bought a wedding band for me as a way to kind of try to keep me safe, and for me to be seen as a woman illegitimately. I mean, one did not, despite your age, without being married. So this heteronormative practice, pretty prevalent throughout the continent, meant that if I weren't married, then I couldn't be a woman, no matter how old I was. So, anyways, I was on the bus. This man had given me a condom, and I was like, well, I've been hit on before. I have had African men very clearly tell me what they wanted. But this was probably, I felt, the most forward I've ever had a man be. And so I looked at him a little puzzled, and he said, just in case you get raped. No, he didn't even say just in case you get raped. He said when you get raped. And so that was a little jarring for me. And essentially his take on this was, here I am, I'm an American woman traveling by myself, I'm young, and it will be inevitable at some point that I'm going to get raped. And so I should have a condom at least to protect myself from AIDS. I lived in Africa at the height of the AIDS epidemic, and saw lots of friends die from the disease of there was just no treatment, and people were dying. So anyways, in Zambia, all of this was going on. This is a farewell party for me, and interestingly enough, almost 2/3 of the people were people that I didn't know, but it was clearly a gay party. And juxtaposed, so this idea that there are not gay people in Africa is just not true. But even having said that, and I was out, but I wasn't outwardly out. There weren't any bars or a newspaper or places to just hang out if you were gay or lesbian or bisexual or transgender. And I realized, and it got worse. The homophobia got worse as I left the country. And so I just provided some examples that of newspaper clippings or news articles, one of which you can see is just a year ago. And it says that Zambia, if it is known that you had a homosexual relationship, it is against the law. It's against nature, if you will. So that was Zambia, but I love Zambia. I lived there for 3 years, and I had 2 partners, and I never felt unsafe, even though I was carjacked. AK-47s pointed at my head. That was scary. I never feared for being intimately involved with a woman, but knew that it might not be easy. In Malawi, on the other hand, again, I was working in Malawi, and I was working with elected officials, the parliamentarians, and so forth. And there, I was dating the woman you saw on the previous slide. She was on a Fulbright, and on her way back to Northwestern, which is essentially how I ended up in Illinois. that woman that you saw in the Zambia photo, and an affair. Nonetheless, it was anyways, drama, honey, drama. So in Malawi, it was slightly different. I was not, in that case, I had to be a little more discreet about my sexuality. But the interesting thing, what was interesting was that I worked for the National Democratic Institute, and we were sharing a house. So on one end, I was sharing this house with one of the other employees who was Zambian and was married, but he had a penchant for prostitutes, and so I would often wake up and there would be prostitutes leaving the house. And sadly, he died of AIDS about 10 years ago. But I was really careful about. I did have my partner come and visit, and it was just not something. I mean, I think people were aware of it, but didn't speak about it. And because of the profile of the job, and because I was engaged in such high-profile conversation, including going to talk to the president of the country, I had to be a little more careful about how I express my sexuality. In Malawi, lots of violence and discrimination, as you can see, against LGBT folk there. And if you got caught being gay, you could spend up to 14 years in jail, unlike in Uganda, where you could be murdered. So it's an interesting, I mean, it's something that I think, as I often see us out at pride parades and at the Rocks or at a Black Pride event, I am always reminded that just because we think we are free, and ain't all of us free. I mean, there's some obviously trans women of color in this country are murdered at ridiculous rates. So we not all free. But I think it is, for those of you who are coming to your own, and not to say that it is easy, but the transition of coming out for me is a little easier than it was as I grew and aged, and so much easier than thousands of gay people on the continent and in other parts of the world. And so I just close with one of my favorite photos and moments. So this is at a Fire and Ink conference. It is a conference for Black LGBTQ writers and authors and other allies who are interested in writing. And while I was there, I bumped into Zanele Mahodi. And Zanele is a filmmaker and a photographer and a model. And one of the more affirming moments for me was watching the documentary called Difficult Love. And I would encourage you all to see it, in which she captures the lives of Black lesbians in South Africa. And it's so beautiful. And it is a testament to the resilience of Black lesbians and Black queer people throughout the globe and continent. And I just have felt a real, and it was beautiful because, nobody seemed to know who she was. And I just looked at her and I knew it instantly. And she was just in the room taking pictures. And I just had to thank her for her courage, because she could, in fact, sadly, one of the rituals in South Africa around Black lesbians is to rape a Black lesbian, as if to straighten her out. And so a difficult love is both a testimony of love, it's a testament to human resilience, and it is a firm statement that we are here, and we're everywhere. And at some point, we just have to be at a space and a place where we can just be who we are. And so I invite you to continue to remember that you are who you are, and you need not apologize for any of that. All right, peace and blessings. Thanks. That's my testimony.
Our Double Dutch Love Song by Alicia, Crosby, and Alexis Mack. Wanting to say I love you feels like double dutch. I think you'll understand because the rhythmic click-clack of ropes and telephone wires is a prominent groove on the soundtrack of the Black girlhood we share. Offering up these three small words reminds me of waiting for the perfect moment to hop in the break between the ropes, where I examine the entry point from different sides and listen to the steadiness of the game's pattern to ensure that the unevenness that is being double-handed won't get the best of me. I'm looking for the right rise and fall between the arcs of what's happening between us to leap, and I suspect you are too.
Jump. Jump too soon and the plastic pellets on the ropes will whip my ankles, reprimanding me for being too soon. And if I jump too late, then I'll be jumping awkwardly to catch up to the rhythm of the ropes, regretfully behind, hoping that there's no regrets of me being on the team. Using my thigh muscles to ready my lunge, back, forth, back, eyeballing the right time. The other girl across the way seems to be thinking, measuring, and counting too. As the ropes move past her face like a flickering TV, I hope I don't fail her. But I trust her. We'll jump together, brandishing smiles of being right on time.
Story behind the poem. So this poem, this Double Dutch Love Song, was something that Alexis and I, this is Alicia by the way, this is something that Alexis and I recorded fairly early on in our, I don't even think we were dating yet. I think we were just like talking. We were talking. I'm doing air quotes that y'all can't see. And yeah, like we knew pretty quickly that we had strong feelings for one another. And yeah.
Yeah, but I think we were facing that feeling of, is it too soon to say I love you? And I think that we both were perhaps like insecure about, is this too soon? Are we rushing into this? And we essentially hid behind the poems to say it.
And I think that this is like a really sweet and unique way that was authentic to us to be able to share these words. Like both of us are writers. We both have, written poetry and performed poetry in different venues over the course of the years. And so this thing that it meant so much to both of us, we were able to employ to share our care for one another. And so that was, oh gosh, now almost a year and a half ago.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost a year and a half ago. We have since gotten engaged, not once, but twice. And so we're preparing to get married in around what we call Christmas of 2021. Next year in the wintertime, we're planning on getting married, but we just wanted to take a few minutes to share this little bit of Black love and Black queer love, and specifically our Black queer love with all of you. Love looks different to different people. It comes different. We feel it at different times. And so we were really grateful for the opportunity to be invited to share a little bit of our love story, an actual artifact from our love story with all of you.
Because when you know, you know.
Yep, they've said it.